It's 1952. In a basement, under the deep recesses of King's College London, Rosalind Franklin captures this image. This is photo 51. This photo clearly shows the helical structure of DNA, a problem that many scientists at the time had been racing to solve. A mystery literally at the center of life. Fast forward to today, and the molecular structure that Rosalind helped to uncover is one of the most famous in the world. You can see it everywhere, from logos to sculptures to advertising. The double helix has a near immutable place in the public psyche. It's no surprise then that soon after its discovery, Hollywood latched onto the concept of this newly discovered molecule. Many science fiction movies have references to genetic engineering, DNA technology, and forensics. The future looks bright for this rapidly accelerating science. But on the silver screen, it is often our innate fear of science that colors this topic. Gattaca is a film with DNA at its heart, and it poses some important questions. Will our ability to alter genes make us greater, or are we playing with fire? If you could give your child the perfect chance at life, would you do it? In Gattaca's near-future setting, genetic editing is used by parents to select only the best features for their future children. That is, if they can afford it. In the film, this technology divides society into two camps. The valids, genetically superior, athletic, intelligent, and physically resilient. And the invalids, thought to be of lower intelligence, generally sickly, and less conventionally attractive. Corporations and governments around the world have adopted methods to ensure that they hire valids for their best positions, leaving invalids to fill up only the lower rungs on the corporate ladder. Even the dating world is affected, as with just a single strand of hair, a person's entire genetic resume, past, present, and future, can be revealed by genetic testing kiosks dispersed around towns and cities. Our main character, Vincent, is an invalid with aspirations of being an astronaut at Gattaca, a role reserved for valids due to the intense intellectual and physical requirements. Since birth, the friction between Vincent's supposed genetic inferiority and his ambitious dreams have weighed heavy on his conscience. For religious reasons, Vincent's parents have decided to leave his genes to chance, godchildren as they're called in the film. But for their second child, Vincent's parents decide to use genetic editing to ensure that he is valid. He is named Anton, after Vincent's father. Being siblings, Vincent and Anton naturally compete at most things, one of those things being a game of chicken, where they swim out from shore as far as they can, challenging their physical endurance and their mental fortitude. Every time, Anton beats Vincent, until one time, the impossible happens, as Vincent says. For the first time ever, Vincent wins the game of chicken. In that moment, made everything else possible. Later that night, Vincent runs away from home. Emboldened by the moment earlier, Vincent is determined to follow his heart and achieve his dreams of becoming an astronaut. Vincent leaves behind his genetic past and becomes a borrowed ladder, a person who has purchased the genetic identity of another individual. When valids become injured or for some reason unable to leave their home, their genetic identity becomes a hot commodity. Underground dealers sell these identities. They go to painstaking measures to help their clients take on the identity of a valid, including burning off their fingertips to replace them, bone-cracking, leg-lengthening surgery, and even sexual enhancements.
Jerome, never shy, pisses on command. Got a beautiful piece of equipment there, Jerome. Have I ever told you that?
Only every time I'm in here.
Occupational hazard. I see a great many in the course of any given day. Yours just happens to be an exceptional example. I don't know why my folks didn't order one like that for me.
Vincent's plan is going perfect until a murder at Gattaca brings two detectives into the building. Along with them, increased security checks, putting Vincent's dreams of leaving the planet at risk. The film Gattaca is open about its message. It is pro-human, but it is not anti-science. Unlike many other science fiction films, science is not the antagonist. The villain in this film is what we might do to each other with future genetic technology, and not the technology itself. Which leads us to the question, what are we doing with it now? CRISPR-Cas9 is the name of a real-world technology scientists use today to edit the genomes of organisms. By making small cuts in a cell's DNA, the missing sequences can be replaced, creating new genes and/or altering the expression of other genes. In 2018, Chinese biophysicist He Jiankui announced he had helped to create the world's first CRISPR-Cas9 edited babies. He and his colleagues used in vitro fertilization to implant embryos that had been edited to be immune to HIV. In China, people with HIV are not allowed to use in vitro fertilization, making conception dangerous, as the child could be born with the disease. For people in this situation, Jiankui offered a solution. In exchange for their participation in his clinical trial, they would be able to have children, and those children would likely be born HIV-free. Such a deal is hard to come by in China, and expensive to do legally. What Jiankui did not tell them, however, is that the experimental gene editing that would take place was illegal to perform. In China, a ban on genetic editing of viable human embryos made the legality of Jiankui's work questionable. While scientists and bioethicists around the world had made guidelines about this work, it was still up to individual countries and eventually individual researchers to self-police their own efforts. Like most important scientific discoveries, Jiankui announced the birth of the twin girls Lulu and Nana on YouTube. So basically, he's the Jake Paul of genetic engineering. No, but seriously, it's so wild to me that the same website that hosts epic rap battles of history, Fortnite dance comps, and PewDiePie was also used to announce one of the most important scientific advancements of our lifetime. Well, at least so far. In a series of 5 videos posted along with the announcement, you see a cautiously optimistic Jiankui. Jiankui was hopeful that the innovation he helped to bring about would be celebrated and lauded around the world. But as the pregnancy began to progress, he appeared to become more aware of the potential backlash. In the 5 videos, Jiankui denounces the use of genetic editing for vanity. He outlines 5 ethical guidelines for genetic editing. He also talks about how the term designer baby elicits a negative response, and his worry that the term misrepresents the true nature of his work, to cure diseases and to help families. In 2019, Jiankui and 2 of his colleagues are imprisoned in China. In a private trial, Chinese authorities accuse Jiankui of breaking bioethics considerations and forging signatures to carry out his work, although much of the evidence was never released to the public. Jiankui would spend 3 years in prison, incur hundreds and thousands of dollars in fines, and lose his positions and funding. It's funny how science fiction, in all its grandiose fantasies, can mirror reality. In some cases, it can even beat reality to the punch. In Gattaca, the science that Jiankui uses to edit a single human gene becomes a widespread technique used in nearly every birth. In the film, genoism, the discrimination against a person based on their genome, creates a divide in society, pushing a socioeconomic wedge between the genetically perfect and the natural man. But despite the lofty ideas this film pushes, its central idea seems to mirror Jiankui's own hopes. In your own life, how often do you let your genes, your past, your history, stop you from being who you want to be? Of course, there are situations where this is inevitable, but for future generations, this may not be the case. Whether genetic editing creates designer babies, cures diseases, or brings about future dystopian genoist societies, it's clear that this particular Pandora's box has been opened and can never be closed. Like other technologies, new techniques will arise, processes will become more efficient, and public opinion will change. And the question that comes to mind for me is, what will the near future hold for our genetic identities? Who knows?